Hey, everybody. Welcome to Black Iron Tri. This is Kenny, and this is the first episode of Fearless Friday. Here we're going to be discussing everything triathlon and not just the swimming and biking and running. We're going to talk about all the things that support the sport, all the things around it, things like gear, nutrition, recovery, and a lot of things that you should not do when trying to get into this sport. I want to make this first episode about something basic, what gear to get. A lot of the comments I've been getting from people who've been watching the videos is, where in the heck where should I start in terms of what gear to get? If you've watched my videos and you've seen my pain cave, what we call a pain cave, you may have heard that term. I've got a lot of stuff in there. But understand that it took me years to accumulate that stuff. Like I mentioned, I've been doing triathlon now for 8 years. I did not start out with 3 or 4 bikes and all of that good stuff. I came from cycling. I had started cycling with a group in Chicago in 2013. And after cycling with them for 3.5 years, was introduced to triathlon by some cyclists who took me to a race in 2017. So even entering into triathlon, it was 3 years of nothing but cycling. And before that, an entire lifetime of bike riding before I even imagined doing all 3 sports. So understand that it's a process getting into it, a process and acquiring what you need. So what we're going to discuss here is, what do you need to just get started? And I'm going to take it sport by sport, so that we don't overwhelm anyone. And we're keeping it very simple. You do not have to go out and buy a bunch of expensive stuff to start this sport. The bike I have, for example, that I use for my long triathlons, I was doing triathlon for 4 years before I bought that bike. I started with the bike that I was using when I was cycling with the group in Chicago. That was the bike I took to my first triathlon and my first Ironman, for that matter. It was a long time. I had to know that I was going to like this sport, love this sport, before I went out and spent a lot of money on any kind of gear. So let's start with the basics. Let's talk about where we can start and understand that most people who enter into triathlon are coming from one of the sports. They were either a runner, they were a cyclist, or they were a swimmer. And they probably have, when they came into the sport, they had all the gear they could possibly need for that specific sport entering into triathlon, and had to learn what else to get. So we're going to break it down by sport here, and talk about what you need to just get started in your triathlon journey. So starting with swimming, super basic here. You need a swimsuit of some sort. You'll need a swim cap and goggles. Now, the interesting thing about the swim cap is that when you go to a race, usually they provide a swim cap. The reason I recommend getting one ahead of time is there's a saying in most endurance sports, certainly in triathlon is where I learned it, is that you do nothing new on race day. In other words, you should train and practice as close to the race conditions as you possibly can. And where that really gets important is new gear. You hear about people showing up at a race with a brand new pair of running shoes or a brand new swimsuit that they've never tried on, even a brand new bike that they've never ridden. That is a huge mistake, because you don't have experience on that particular piece of gear. And so it's just a great practice to get equipment and practice the way you're going to race. And the reason I say swim cap is, if you haven't done any races, then maybe you don't have any free swim caps. So get one and start wearing it. They are mandatory in most of the races, all the races I've been in. And part of it is safety. They want to be able to clearly see. You'll see that swim caps are generally some bright green or bright yellow or very colorful. They want to be able to see folks and make sure that everybody's okay. They've got people out on the water, and you can lose people in the water without a very obvious and visible way to see them. So swim caps are mandatory. You may as well practice in them So go ahead and pick them up. It's probably the cheapest thing on your list in terms of gear you're going to buy. Goggles, again, you want to be able to see while you're out there. Get some that fit your face. You do not have to spend a lot of money on these. You can pick them up at a sporting goods store. You can spend a lot. Anything I'm naming here, you can spend a lot of money on if you want to. I'm trying to convince you to take it easy up front until you get into the sport and realize what you like, realize what works. And the inexpensive gear is great for starters. All right. And as far as a swimsuit, that basic swimsuit for men or women, I know a lot of men wear Speedos. I am not a Speedo guy. I've never been that confident and comfortable in wearing Speedos. I generally wear what's called jammers. These are spandex shorts that cover a little bit more of leg. And frankly, I train in a tri-suit. Now you're getting into a little bit more complex gear, but a tri-suit is without putting too fine a point on it, it is a form of suit that you can wear for an entire triathlon. In other words, you put the tri-suit on, and if it's not a wetsuit swim, you wear that thing for the whole race. You swim in it, you get out of the water, you get on your bike. It's got a little padding in it to simulate cycling shorts, and then you run in it. And it saves you time in what's called transition. That's the time you spend transitioning from one sport to the other. So I train in a tri-kit because it's how I race. I race in a tri-kit. But for starters, if you're just trying to learn how to swim, get your hands on just a regular swimsuit, something you feel comfortable in, and get to the pool. Other swim gear you want to look into, and this is sort of optional, but you'll notice as you start to training, especially if you take on a coach, they will want you to practice certain drills. And drills are part of swimming that, it's outside of freestyle. It helps you to focus on a particular action or particular movement in your swim stroke. And so it helps to have, we call them toys. A lot of swimmers and a lot of triathletes call these toys. It helps to have these because they are drill aids, they are swim aids. And the top items on there are a pull buoy. This is something you put between your legs that helps keep your legs afloat. That is a struggle for a lot of people, is keeping their legs level when they're swimming. And a pull buoy takes that kind of out of the equation so you can focus on your pull, on your arm movement. Another another toy is a kickboard. And this is a board that floats a little bit on the water. You can rest your hands on it and just kick your way across the pool. I use mine. I have a kickboard. I'm not great at kicking, but I use mine also to hold my training plan for the day. I put it on a piece of paper, or wet the paper, or wet the kickboard, and I slap it on there. But it's really used for helping with your kick stroke. Another item are paddles. These are plastic paddles that fit on your hands. What they're used for is to help build strength, because when you put your hand in the water with that paddle on, it makes it tougher to push that water back as you're going through your swim stroke. So that helps to build strength. I generally do paddles with a pull buoy so that I'm focusing only on arm and chest and back strength. But that is another potential toy that you want to pick up. One other one is a snorkel, and a snorkel is less used by in terms of training, but it is something that coaches like to see. A snorkel allows you to keep your head underwater and still breathe. So you keep your head face down in the water and do other movements, so you can focus on those movements and not worry about breathing. Just a word of advice, snorkel is something you need to get used to. Practice with it. The first time you use it, it will be a little bit unnerving because you're not used to breathing through a tube to get your air. But once you start working with it, it is fine. It works great. I use it for certain drills that aren't necessarily a normal swim stroke, so I don't have that opportunity to turn my body and get air. Having a snorkel allows me to do some of those drills without worrying about breathing. And then some of the more specialized equipment include things like a wetsuit. A wetsuit is something that definitely is down the line once you're comfortable with swimming and are taking the sport seriously, because they are not cheap. But what a wetsuit is you've seen, if you've ever watched a show with some people going deep sea diving or whatever. It's a neoprene suit that covers your whole body, and it can come sleeveless or with sleeves. It provides warmth, so it's usually used in colder swims, and as well as buoyancy. So a lot of people love it when a swim is considered wetsuit legal, because they get to wear these wetsuits and adds buoyancy, which helps keep them above the water. Another cool thing about wetsuits is if you get tired or any kind of way, not comfortable with your swim, you can literally turn over on your back in a wetsuit and float. And so you don't have to worry about breathing or anything like that. So wetsuits are great. There will be races that you may get into that where the water is too cool, and it might be wetsuit mandatory. It's usually, and we'll cover those temperatures when we get deeper into some race discussions, but not necessary for starting off. Another nice to have for later down the line is something called sim shorts or simulation shorts. These are made of the same material as a wetsuit, only they're just shorts, and they help to keep your legs buoyant for practice swimming. They're great for practicing in. They're great for getting used to the feel of what a wetsuit would be like without actually wearing a wetsuit to a pool or whatever. They're a lot less expensive than a wetsuit, but they're still what I consider a specialty item. And then finally, there's a swim skin. This is a super specialty item where it basically removes a bit of drag in your swim. It doesn't provide a ton of buoyancy. It doesn't provide a ton of thermal protection. This is a suit that's used by swimmers who just want an extra, I call it slipperiness in the water, and can't wear a wetsuit because the swim is considered either wetsuit optional or wetsuit illegal. And we will cover that in future episodes, what that means. So again, let's just go over the basics. So just to recap, just starting out in swimming, you need the basics. You need a swim cap, you need goggles, and you need a swimsuit that you feel comfortable in. For me, it's jammers, but everyone should do what suits them best. And just to be clear, in starting off in swimming, if you're brand new to this, you should be starting in a pool and not in open water. Open water is a different animal, which we'll cover later on in Fearless Fridays. All right. If you have the budget, I would suggest investing in the toys we talked about, specifically a pull buoy, a kickboard, a snorkel, and some paddles. Again, these help with drills and other swimming techniques that aren't necessarily a freestyle. Next on the list is your biking gear. So obviously you need a bike. And you do not have to go all out here. This is going to probably be the most expensive item you buy for triathlon, regardless of how much you spend. It is important that you choose a bike that fits you and that's comfortable and that's in your budget. And mind you, you can spend thousands of dollars on a bicycle. I do not recommend that for starting out. To give you an example, my first bike for cycling is what I used for triathlon. Now, mind you, I did spend a little bit of money for my first cycling bike, but understand I had a lifetime of riding bikes before buying my cycling bicycle. I was a carbon fiber road bike, which is the recommended bike if you can afford it. But it's not necessary. You can get into triathlon. I have seen people at full distance triathlons on hybrid bikes and mountain bikes. Would I do that? I don't think I have the skill set for that. But I've seen people race in that and finish races with that. In terms of starting out for triathlon, starting to learn triathlon, any bike will do as long as it fits you and is safe. I will say, buy a bike either from someone you know, a global bike swapper, or perhaps Facebook Marketplace. Definitely consider a bike shop. If you're buying a new bike, go to a bike shop. Do not buy your bike from a box store. And I won't go as far as to say any stores' names, but you know the stores that have a sporting goods section in the corner behind all the appliances and whatever else they carry. Um, the bikes from those stores are not well built. You generally will be back in the store, either getting it fixed or buying a new one in 3 to 6 months if you ride the bike at all. Go to a bike shop if you're going to buy new, or even to look into used bikes. That is what is highly recommended for beginners, is buy a used bike. You're just learning how to get out there and pedal. You don't have to invest in all of the toys that can go with that, like clipless pedals, which is an interesting concept because you actually clip into clipless pedals, because then you have to buy the shoes that go with those clipless pedals. Start off basic. You just need a bike with some flat pedals that works. This will get you out there, get you used to riding. Just again for reference, the bike I bought when I started cycling in 2013 with the group out in Chicago, I was riding that bike for 3.5 years before I started triathlon. And it is the bike I started triathlon. It's the bike I did my first triathlon with. It's the bike I did my first Ironman with. I was doing Ironman for 4 years before I bought an expensive triathlon bike. Just giving you some reference. Do not go out and necessarily spend, unless you've got the budget. But understand, I've seen a lot of people with $10,000 bikes who couldn't ride their way out of a paper bag. It is a wet paper bag. It is not necessary to go that route. Buy an inexpensive bike that fits your needs, fits you, and that's comfortable, and get out there and pedal. The second most important item, and some might argue first, but it's useless without the bike, is a helmet. Now here you do well to spend a little bit of money. And by a little bit of money, I mean more than $50. Preferably $100, but that gets to be a little budget stretch. Understand, a helmet is protecting your head. And trust me, the first time you fall, it won't be your fault. Okay, that is not to question anybody's safety among themselves. But if you do fall on a bike, you do want to have a helmet on. Just to note, helmets are absolutely required in races. You are not even allowed to touch your bike without a helmet on at a race. They do not play around with that. It is very serious. So go and find a quality bike helmet. The bike helmet I have now, I probably spent about $150 on. Now, again, this is after years in triathlon. My first bike helmet probably ran about $45 to $55, something like that. You can get them cheaper, but I'd recommend getting a quality helmet. And there's a rating. I'll look it up and I'll post it here up on the screen. There's a national safety rating that they put on a helmet. Look for that rating at a minimum, and go with that. All right. Now, the next two things are kind of optional, and it depends on your comfort. One is padded shorts. Now, I mentioned when we talk about tri-suits, when we talk about bike cycling shorts, padded shorts help out in long distance riding. All right, if you're going to be riding a long time in these seats, if you look at some of the seats on these road bikes, they're not the biggest seats in the world. So you're on a tiny seat for a long time. It might help to have padded shorts. When we talk about tri-suits later on, you'll understand they actually come with padding as well, just not as much because you have to run in those and swim in them as well. But consider some padded shorts. They even make padded cargo shorts, so you don't have to wear the spandex if you don't want to. There's an acronym for people like me in the cycling world and triathlon world called MAMIL. That's MAMIL, middle-aged men in Lycra. You ever see a bunch of cyclists come into your coffee shop on a Saturday morning and they're all in their spandex? That's where it comes from. But those shorts they're wearing are padded. It does add comfort to longer rides, something I suggest. And then some people buy gloves. for comfort of your hands. Personally, I tried gloves for years, never found a pair that really worked for me. So I do not wear gloves when I ride, and I'm fine. I think the way the gloves are built, maybe I'm putting too much pressure on my hands and where the seams are causing an issue, but just something to consider. That's it for starting off with a bike. You need a bike, you need a helmet, perhaps some padded shorts, and perhaps some gloves, and go from there. Now, there are all kinds of accessories that you can buy for your bike. If you're going to be riding at twilight or early in the morning, a headlight, a tail light are kind of smart, and it's more for so people can see you if you're riding on the street, not so much for showing you the way. The headlights, although they can be very, very bright, they're not extremely useful for protecting you from the world. They are really so you can be seen. And the same is true of the clothing that you wear when you're riding. You want to wear something that's easily seen. Do not wear black clothing at night going riding. You won't be seen. And if you're riding on the street, it's dangerous. We will get into some of these more intricate and detailed methods for training later on. But start with a bike, a helmet, some padded shorts, and gloves. The bike is important. Go to a bike shop. If you're going to shop at a store, don't buy it from a box store or some department store. That's my biggest piece of advice in terms of buying a quality bike. And then last but of course not least is running, your running gear. And that's really about the shoes, right? Buying some quality running shoes is going to be important. In a triathlon or any kind of running you're going to be doing, the pressure and the punishment you're going to put on your legs really gets softened by good quality running shoes. Now, here's another place where you can spend an obscenely large amount of money if you have the budget and want to. I don't recommend it starting off. These days, most of the running shoes that are specific for running, and I mean by specific for running shoes, not basketball shoes, not tennis shoes, running shoes. They have running stores. There's a chain called Fleet Feet, I believe, that's popular. You can go to Dick's Sporting Goods. Go to a store that specializes in sports and outdoor sports and running and that kind of thing. Talk to the people there. Get properly fitted for some running shoes. Here, I'd say spending somewhere between $75 and $150 max. I mean, you really don't have to. $150 is actually on a real high end. I don't believe I have a pair of running shoes that cost more than $150. I generally buy Nike. I do have a pair of Brooks that I bought. I like the the styles I buy, and I usually trade into another pair of shoes, or not trade in, but I buy a new pair of shoes after I put about 500 miles on a pair, and then the old ones become house shoes and run around shoes. I don't get rid of them unless they don't fit anymore, which is rare. So your shoes are the most important, and then any kind of running gear you want to use. I wear shorts that have a spandex underlayment, and then have just regular shorts on the front and a loose shirt like the one I'm wearing right now. Something that's moisture wicking. I would recommend moisture wicking socks for both for running. Not necessarily pure cotton, because they can get wet and they're irritating, when, at least to me. But you do your thing. Socks is very much a personal choice, how you roll with that. I will mention I don't wear socks on cycling. I actually only wear socks when I'm running. And moisture wicking is key for that, at least for me. So that's it. I mean, that's it. And again, we can expand on all of these. We will expand on all of these sports later in terms of other gear that you can buy to help support your training and triathlon life. But to get out there and get started, you've got the basics. So that'll do it for this first episode of Fearless Fridays. We're going to keep it very, very simple. We're just talking about what you need to get started on your training journey. In future episodes, we'll talk about what you need to expect at races and how you should start all that off. But get the basic gear. Have what you need to get out there and start practicing, start training. I mentioned before getting a coach. That is optional. I mentioned the tool Training Peaks. If you go to Training Peaks, they actually have links to training plans that you can download to Training Peaks and use on your own. No coach involved. A lot of those are done by the coach that I use, my pro coach. And they do, some of them, they're not free. They cost like, a nominal fee to get a training plan for a specific race. So you can literally go there and say, I want to do a sprint triathlon. And if you have a date in mind, or you have a specific triathlon, you have that date or whatever, but you download the plan. It's yours once you buy it, so you can move the plan itself around in terms of start and end date without buying a premium Training Peaks plan. But with a premium Training Peaks plan, you can move actual workouts around as well. As you can see, things can add up quite quickly in this sport. This is not the cheapest sport on the planet, right? I'm just going to be clear about that. This can be a very, very expensive sport. But I have yet to find anything more fulfilling, more geared towards general and sustainable fitness. I highly recommend it. That's why I'm here. And so let's keep it at that for today. I hope you like this very first episode of Fearless Fridays. We'll get deeper into the sport as we move along. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel, like this video. That helps us out, helps me out, helps me be able to grow the channel more than you know. So I'd like to know that you're interested. And leave comments. If you don't like what you see or you have any questions, I do get back to folks that leave comments. I'm hoping there'll be a day where there's so many I can't get back. But so far, I haven't had an issue with it. I've had some people who know me actually reach out to me over personal email with a lot of great suggestions, a lot of which you're seeing right now and you'll see in the future. So I do use that input from you, from the audience, to help educate and hopefully motivate folks to get into this sport. All right. This is Kenny signing off for Black Iron Tri. And remember, you do not have to be the fastest. Just be fearless. No, I ain't giving you up.